Look at your hands. No claws, no fangs. You are the slowest runner in the savannah. 7 million years ago, you weren't a hunter. You were lunch. By all laws of nature, we should have been extinct in the first season of this game, but we cheated. We broke the rules of evolution to take over the planet. This is how the weakest primate became the world's ultimate nightmare. Let's dive in. Species: Sahelanthropus Tchadensis. Timeline: 7 million years ago. Height: 100 centimeters. Location: Chad, Central Africa. Brain size: 350 cubic centimeters. Chimpanzee-like. Imagine Africa. The jungle is disappearing. It's getting incredibly hot. Our ancestors lived in the trees, and it was safe there, but the food ran out. We had to drop to the ground, and on the ground there was tall grass and lions. What to do? If you're on all fours, you can't see the enemy. And here comes the first bug of civilization. We stood on 2 legs. Why? To see the surface of the grass. But there was a side effect: free hands. Now you can carry food to the children, or take a stick. This was the first step to world domination, literally. But there was one problem. Walking on 2 legs is very slow. We became an easy target, and then nature threw us a second surprise. Species: Australopithecus afarensis. Timeline: 3.2 million years ago. Height: 115 centimeters. Location: Ethiopia, East Africa. Brain size: 450 cubic centimeters. Specialized biped. Let's fast forward 3 million years. Meet Lucy. She's an Australopithecus, just over a meter tall, with a brain like a chimpanzee. But she's already stomping confidently on foot. Do you know why she needed her hands free? Not for her iPhone, but to carry rocks and sticks. She couldn't make knives yet, but she could already throw a rock at a hyena that was brazenly staring at her cub. New twist. Back then, we were scavengers. We didn't hunt. We'd wait for the lion to finish eating the zebra, and then run in and try to snatch a piece. But how do you get the caloric marrow out of a bone you can't crack? The right way: smash it with a rock. That was our first gadget, a rock, the most important tool in history. Species: Homo habilis, the first toolmaker. Timeline: 2.4 million years ago. Height: 130 centimeters. Location: Tanzania, East Africa. Brain size: 650 cubic centimeters. Weapon of choice: stone tools. About 2 million years ago, Homo habilis, the handyman, came onto the scene. His brain began to grow rapidly. Why? Meat. Bone marrow gave us so much energy that nature said, "Okay, kid, now you can afford a bigger brain." Habilis was the first to make real tools, not just picking up stones, but hewing them. Now we had knives. We became more efficient at cutting meat. The twist. But then a crisis occurred, a sharp, cold snap. Resources became even scarcer. And then someone appeared who would decide to change the rules of the game forever. Someone who would decide to leave home. Species: Homo erectus, the global traveler. Timeline: 1.9 million years ago. Height: up to 185 centimeters. Location: Africa, Asia, and Europe. Brain size: 1,000 cubic centimeters. Mastery: fire and advanced hunting. Meet Homo erectus, the upright man. He was the first to decide it was time to leave Africa, but reaching Asia or Europe requires a lot of energy. The brain is the most expensive part of your body. It devours calories like crazy. Raw meat and roots, forget it. You won't get very far on that. And then a miracle happened: fire. We learned to cook. Fried meat is digested many times faster. Our intestines became smaller, and our brains began to grow by leaps and bounds. We began to get smarter, but the price was high. Because of our large brains, children were born helpless. Now we had to band together to survive. Thus, the first family was born, and the first plan for tomorrow. Why did Homo erectus decide to leave in the first place? Africa, 2 million years ago, was no paradise. Imagine endless drought, shrinking resources, and brutal competition among predators. Erectus was the first to master the distance. With long legs and the ability to sweat, he could run for hours. He simply followed the herds. Animals moved north in search of water, and we followed them. Where did they go? They had no maps. Those who turned right settled Asia, reaching all the way to China and Indonesia. But the harshest fate awaited those who turned left, Europe. And what about those who stayed in Africa? They chose a different path. They remained in the cradle, where the heat and predators forced the brain to evolve, not for surviving the cold, but for cunning and social bonds. This was the beginning of the great schism of our kind. Species: Homo neanderthalensis. The Ice King. Timeline: 400,000 years ago. Height: 160 centimeters. Location: Europe and Western Asia. Brain size: 1,500 cubic centimeters. Mastery: apex predator skills and heavy weapons. Those who turned toward Europe walked straight into a climatic trap. The Ice Age had arrived. Imagine this. In just a few thousand years, lush green forests transformed into endless icy wastelands. Resources almost gone. Around you, only mammoths, woolly rhinos, and a frost that kills in minutes. To survive here, the human body had to undergo a radical tuning. Over hundreds of thousands of years, in this frozen hell, evolution forged the Neanderthals. They became shorter and stockier to preserve precious heat. Their bones grew thicker, their muscles denser. The nose expanded to warm the freezing air with every breath. These weren't just humans. They were biological tanks, built for life on the edge. While their African cousins, the Sapiens, learned to cooperate and invent, Neanderthals learned to endure and strike first. In Europe, there was no room for social networks. There was only room for those who could face a mammoth head-on and win. And so, the world waited. Two different branches of humanity, two different ways to survive, and one inevitable meeting that would decide everything. But don't think for a second that the world belonged to only two players. Evolution isn't a straight line, it's chaos. Before becoming biological tanks, those who headed to Europe passed through the stage of Homo heidelbergensis. He was a rugged nomad, the first to build wooden shelters. It was from him that the Neanderthals descended. But that's not all. While Europe was freezing and Africa was scorching, another player was hiding in the east, in the caves of Altai and the forests of Asia. The Denisovans, massive and mysterious. They were the masters of the East. And at the same time, on the islands of Indonesia lived tiny hobbits, barely a meter tall. The planet was crowded. We were never alone. But about 40,000 years ago, the climate dealt its final blow. Resources vanished. It was time for the endgame. Sapiens, armed with clever tactics and long-range weapons, faced the Neanderthals in their final fortress, Europe. Strength against cunning. Loners against the collective. We didn't just defeat them in battle, we absorbed them. A part of the Neanderthals and Denisovans simply dissolved into us. Look in the mirror. If you're not from Africa, 2% of that Ice King still lives in your DNA today. We survived not because we were the strongest. We survived because we knew how to tell stories and unite for the sake of the future. That is how the era of many humanities ended, and our era began.